patents are actually stronger than title. This is patented land. That's why the national monument that's around it right now can't stop me from mining. And then they could condemn it and try to take it from me, but I got a $400 million appraisal, and I'll take $400 million for it. Yeah. But they have to pay me that much to take it away.
Tickets?
So they can't take it away.
Brother? Brother, any tickets? I got you. Guys, listen up. I'm going to introduce somebody here that knows about this spot. But the reason we stopped here,
but he couldn't be here.
This is a centerpiece of two places that we're going to stop. There's a real-life murder mystery that this is involved in, and I watched, there's like a 1-hour documentary on TV that you can watch about what happened here. So this was the Red Dog Mine office. We're going to stop at the Red Dog Mine, and we're going to talk about the disappearance of April Pitzer, and who's never been found. And Dave Taylor knows more about that than anybody I know. So, well, he did go. Yeah, he did.
All right, well, Paul Renner's a hard act to follow. I don't know anything about trains or borax, but when it comes to sex and murder and mysteries and distant person, I'm your guy. What's the brethren?
Satisfactory!
There was a gal that disappeared out here in midsummer of 2004. Her name is April Pitzer. There's been a number of documentaries across the media for that many years since till today about where she is and what happened to her. One of the main suspects in that case was a guy named Dan Dansky, and he frequented this place. This is a place that's a little bit attached in the story to the next stop we're going to make after the cemetery at the Red Dog Mine. He called this the Red Dog Mine office. And he frequented this place before the building collapsed here in the back, and before the story became so popular. There were poems and things that he wrote all over the walls in here that were quite interesting, quite perverse. But over the years, people have taken them off as souvenirs. So there's a little bit of remnants left in there, but not much. But Dan was the main suspect in her disappearance. It's an ongoing investigation. There's a dig that's going to happen in the next couple of weeks with the deputy coroner, myself, and a few other folks in Newberry Springs. And part of the story goes that there were a number of events that happened here that ended up culminating at the Red Dog Mine. You're going to be able to go down in the mine in a couple of stops. But the dogs, the investigators that were out here at the time, the SO search team, the dogs did indicate, and there is significant area down in the mine where somebody most likely was. She was then removed and taken someplace else once the investigation started rolling. But the connection here is Dan Dansky. If you go on Disappeared on the internet, you can watch episode after episode, probably 3 or 4 hours thereabouts, on where the investigation has been and where it's going, about the folks that used to populate this place. So as you walk around, you can see some of the sayings that are still on in the cabin. Be careful because it's getting pretty dilapidated. And then in the back, you'll see Red Dog Mine over the workshop back there. This is a place that he called home a lot, which was the trailer. And there's a lot of markings in there. And wherever Dan went, he left his signature, so to speak. So he's kind of an easy guy to trail along. As we were searching out here over the many years, it's amazing in this desert how many bodies you find that they're not the ones you're looking for. We'd find bones and just simply rebury them, especially there at Ragtown, which is going to be one of the stops. There's a lot of ancient burial grounds. If you know what to look for, they're not that hard to spot. We had the deputy coroner out here on a number of occasions, David Van Norman, and he said that if the bodies stood up out here, it looked like the forest. There's that many. He's got enough bones down in his office, I guess, in San Bernardino. He said to build a picket fence from here to state line. So but the one you're looking for you know, that's where you're going, and anything else is just fog, and it kind of goofs up the investigation. You just stick them back in the hole. But anyway, that's the connection where we are right now with where we are going at the Red Dog. It's a pretty interesting place. It was a, you know, all the tweaker hangout.
Spain.
Kind of.
Yeah, we talked about
Spain.
Spain on the painted. You told me that was a taunt. Or
Well, the lead investigator at the time, her name was Spain, so shortly after they started putting stuff together, someone came out here and wrote her name on the trailer on this building, and then pointed an arrow. I don't know if it's still there, and back to the, you know, pointing to the ground. So, you know, there's been a million different ways that she's been killed, and a million different ways where she's at.
The guy asked where Dan is still alive.
Dan, everybody connected with this case, all the primary suspects in this case died mysteriously in the course of two years.
COVID related?
Yeah, COVID related. Four of the individuals ended up dying in a plane crash on their way to Arizona. And Dan died of cancer, and he was asked if there was anything he wanted to get off his mind, off his chest, you know, before he passed away, and he said no. But he did indicate when the search teams were out here, he would say that, you know, they're close, but they haven't gone far enough. And so, you know, instead of following all of those rumors, you know, you kind of just have to piece together the facts as best you can. Otherwise, you'll be looking all over the desert. You know, you'll have a pile of bones, and none of them will be April.
When did he die?
He died about 2014, thereabouts.
7 years.
And the dig that we have going on in the next couple of weeks, we've been waiting on some permitting and some other issues, but that individual, it's going to be on his property, and he died within a year of Dan death. He was an interesting guy. He'd been out here since the late 70s when he came out here to make his home in various buildings out here. He did 2 tours in Vietnam. When he got out in 74, he wasn't, obviously he was a different person. So there's been a lot of speculation that he was the Route 66 killer. I guess a lot of you folks know that where we are in Ludlow, all the way down to Essex, it was kind of I don't want to say a killing ground, but you find a lot of neat stuff on the side of the road. You know, feet and hands and breasts and heads. They just found a torso a couple of years ago there in Essex. So, you know, there's a lot of interesting things that go on out here.
Heading out to the old peat mine.
So, shortly after April disappeared, a lady was riding a bus in Barstow, and she said that I know where that gal is. She's in a hole in the desert south of Ludlow. And because the folks knew Dan and his hole, which is the Red Dog Mine he claimed as his own, didn't take too much investigation to figure out she was pointing to this particular area. So once the weather cleared a little bit, this was a little bit later in the year in 2005, investigators came out here, a mining crew or a confined space rescue crew came out from Arizona, and they lowered dogs down here and went around the various air shafts. A lot of the back part of the mine is you can't get back there anymore. So it was raining, it was bad, the dogs did indicate a couple of times, and it was obvious that something had been moved. If you go down in here, I can't remember whether it's the right or left side, there you see little bits of what we call desert tortillas, and that's the blue tarps, because they're very indicative of why people use tarps to wrap their evidence in, who knows. But So you'll see some of that down here, and we do have photographs of both Dan and his partner here loading something. Somebody had taken the picture unbeknownst to them. But anyway, a lot of time was spent out here, both not only in this mine, but we're going to go next, and then all around the hills here. It was gone over with a fine-tooth comb for many months, and in fact many years, until other stuff surfaced. But one thing that I didn't say, I was saving it for out here, that Dan was noted for. So on any particular weekend, about where the Ford is parked there with the flags, there was a building there. It was kind of like a bunkhouse, and it stood up until probably, I don't know, 5, 10 years
There was
ago.
8 of them. They were old trailers.
Yeah, and so they partied out here, and there was
They cooked meth out there.
right, there was a fire ring over here, and Dan had an entire array of women's clothing. So he'd be out here tweaking, just dolled up like nobody's business. And he'd be dancing around the fire, and he was open about it, right? He was a big guy. The saying out here for many years that we all heard, and it was true, he ruled this place from Newberry Springs out here to state line with an iron fist. He was a big guy, and nobody messed with him. But this was his place. This was his getaway place when he wasn't down in Newberry Springs doing all this nefarious things. The same group involved with this for many years was breaking into the box cars or into the containers out here in Ludlow when they would sidetrack and whatever. So they had a lot of nefarious stuff going on out here. So what ended up happening to April, it's surmised that something happened to her, probably unintentionally here, and she was put here, and then as the investigation progressed, she was then moved into Newberry Springs, where she was living temporarily. But you can go down there, a lot of stuff has been removed, but like I said before, Dan left his signature everywhere. So if you get on Google Earth, just on the other side of the hills, there's another grave over there we never made it to on the pre-runs, but Dan left his signature you could only see from the air. And he wrote out messages that are probably 300 or 400 feet long in basalt, in the volcanic rock. And when we came out here, or over the months, you'd find stuff written on rocks, you know, April's name, whatever. There was a mattress down in here that was speckled with blood, a lot of blood. The building that was here, one of her clothing, one of her garments was tied in a noose, and it was left hanging here. Her suitcase was found out here, and her clothes were scattered around. I think Doug found that. But yeah, it's been the site of a lot of, and so because of the documentaries and so forth, you know, this place has been pretty well traveled. You know, but that usually, or it had been locked, you couldn't get down in there for some time. Just a little bit more to the Pitzer story. So when you do, if you do watch it on Discovery or whatever program you choose, you'll see that this is kind of the hub of activity during most of those documentaries.
They were gold miners.
Well, tweakers are mining, you know, they mine in anything.
But they got their money from the gold miners.
Yeah, actually what they were doing, one of the girls that went missing with April, she was found just over the state line in Kern County at the Billy Mine. If anybody sits here, anybody's been to the Billy Mine, they mine colemanite there. But these guys, they travel, you know, quite distances. It takes them a little bit of time. Tweakers are a little low on fuel most of the time. But they... Pardon me? Yeah, that's right. But they found her skull all the way out in at the Billy Mine. And she came missing from here. What's that? The Billy Mine, is that the one in Death Valley? Yes, just in the Kern side. So when this is a little bit interesting, so we've all been on the Ballarat runs up to the Manson cabin, right? So, but I think it was before that burnt down. Remember, they had a tip that there was some bodies buried out there. Right. Well, Kern County is short on resources, So the deputy and the people that were involved on that dig, when LaCleve was found, that was missing from her skull was out there, they pulled off that dig there in Guller Wash, and they went out to the Billy mine trying to find more pieces of her. And you know, out here, typically when you find a bone or something, the radius is about a mile, because that's how far they tend to get spread, either from, you know, washing through rain and wind or animal activity. So, you know, the circle gets pretty big. And so that is also connected to here, because they were cohorts there in Forest Hill.
So the cadaver dog hid. What, they think she was moved? She was there for a while? The body moved or what?
Correct. So they lowered him down here, and over in the spots that you cannot get to from here, where the vents are, they laid down over there.
Wow.
Yeah.
But there was two groups of people there. There was some miners mining. They were actually a pretty rough bunch. And then the guys that put the dead body were here. And the guys that were mining here told those guys to put the body in here because they found the body. Or what I heard, they found her here. And they told them, you better get her out here by tomorrow, or we're calling the sheriff on you. And so then they took her from here and they moved her. But it was the guys that were working here told them that, what I read, in my police report I have, they told them to move her out.
Well, we even went out to your place.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
You know, before you had it.
Yeah.
And
I see the pictures.
but she's been killed a dozen different ways and buried in a dozen different places. But it's just one of those interesting stories of the Mojave. You know? And it's not unusual.
Well, it's unsolved.
It's unsolved. What else? That's it?
That's it.
Lunch?
Hey, lunch.
Wild. Did he say this was still active?
I think it is. A big huge door.
I'll let you know. I'm going.
A bunch of people went down there, obviously.
I got my cell phone flashlight. Does that go up? I'm not good so far. Yeah. I think it's blocked off, actually. Yeah. Can't get me, Gilbert! Tickets?
So they can't take
tickets,
it.
brother! Brother, any tickets? I got you!
Stand back from me!